The question of food security is a very uncomfortable one because it tells us an uncomfortable picture of the world we live in. At the moment, 1 billion people go hungry in this world. 1 billion people. Majority of those will be women, but 1 billion people. That's a huge amount. If you look at a place like India, malnutrition for children stands at 47%. So 47% of Indian children are malnourished. 47%. What does that say? That's one of the richest countries in the world, where we have billionaires, 10 billionaires or so on. There's enough food grain in India to go from India to the moon and back. There's enough food in storage to go to the moon and back. And we're talking about food security. It gives you an idea of what do we mean by food security. There is enough food already. It's about distribution. One question I often ask people is, how many starvation deaths are there in India? Nobody can answer that question. Do you know why? Because nobody knows. That data is concealed by the government. So we have no idea how many starvation deaths. Why is this such a big secret? In the biggest democracy in the world, why can't we have this answer? That's one of the key things. And we look at the food security bill in India, that's around making sure that if somebody goes hungry in India, somebody is accountable. That's why this legislation is so important. For many years we've been having starvation deaths, and nobody has been accountable for that, even though there's enough grain to go to the moon and back. Somebody needs to be accountable for this. Somebody needs to take responsibility of this. In a country that's so rich and so big and such a bastion of democracy, how can you have democracy where people starve to death? How can you have democracy where 47% of people are starving? What kind of democracy is that? What kind of accountability is built into the democracy? None. Where is the political leadership in this area? Those are the kind of things. And the importance of food security in the food security bill is a question of democracy as it is a question of food. So it's part of a raft of policies that have come in. The National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, that's a national right for the poorest to have guaranteed employment. The right to information, that every citizen of India has the right to information. The Education Act, making sure that everyone has a right to a good quality education. This food security bill is just part of that democratic tools required to ensure that every citizen in India is treated respectfully and gets what's theirs. India is a bountiful country. There's enough for everyone. And it's shocking that 47% of the children go malnourished. It's shocking that in the biggest democracy in the world, we still don't know how many starvation deaths there are. These kind of things need to be addressed, and one way is the food security bill, but there's many, many other ways. So climate change is one of the big drivers, I think, that could tip the balance around food production. So again, this is a question that is very difficult to answer, and I think this is where we need to put a lot of our energies, is how do we develop food in the context of climate change? So, increase weather variabilities, increase flooding, and so on and so forth. So, who is hungry is only going to be exacerbated by things like climate change. Now, to address climate change through food production is nonsensical, because the causes of climate change are around dirty fuel and the way we live and our lifestyles in the West, and obviously in the middle classes in developing countries as well. So it's asking big questions. And the thing about looking at food, it's just another narrative of society. So yes, we need to increase food production, or we need to address food production, but we have to look at why are people hungry, and that's A, there's enough food around, and that's not being distributed evenly, and also B, there's already inequalities in society, which means some people are poorer and some people aren't, which means some people can afford to buy food, some people can't. Some of these questions are more societal questions, political questions, other than, whether food production needs to increase as well. And climate change, as another driver of food scarcity, again, is another political question about how we live our lives. So I think, we can't really separate questions around food with questions around society. That's if we have to leave with anything, I think the thing we need to leave with is that actually food security can never be delivered, because those who are poor in India, for example, if you give them food, they're still going to suffer from poor sanitation, or they're going to suffer from oppression from being a Dalit, or they're going to suffer from oppression of being Adivasi. So ensuring that somebody who goes hungry is far more complex than we can actually just have a policy that says, right, here's a lot of food, this will sort you out. Actually, it's much more complex. It's actually around how society is organised and how politically do we address this question.